I decided to play Astrometica, a new survival crafting game set in an asteroid field, and here is what happened. Like so many games of this type, my character was stuck aboard a crashing spaceship and managed to make it to an escape pod in the nick of time. And this is where our story begins, apparently sometime later in the pod. I step outside and I'm greeted with a beautiful view, but the moment is cut short by the realization that I am dangerously low on oxygen. Inside the pod, we find a terminal that details the descent into despair, but that's not how this story ends, no, so it's time to get to work. So I float around a bit, slowly gathering the materials for some basic equipment. A jetpack, backpack, scrapper, which is a sort of pickaxe hammer thing, a mining tool, and a scanner tool, as well as some food, water, and a few spare batteries. With some basic equipment in hand, it's time to go exploring. I use my new jetpack to boost on over to a glowing dome, which has been conveniently pinned as a waypoint. Upon arriving, I'm relieved to find that it contains oxygen, so we aren't going to die a horrible death. There's a destroyed building here, and the scanner tool lights up as I approach, so I set about scanning all of the fragments scattered around the place. Most importantly, I find a build tool, which let me set up my own cozy little space habitat to call home, as well as fragments for wall storage, an upgrade machine, and a battery charger. I also find a couple of data pads which tell a bit of story, and create a couple of new waypoints to explore later. I'm feeling pretty good about everything I found at this location, so with everything sorted, I set out back home to get ready to make my own place. It turns out that space habitats take a lot of materials, so I spent a while mining all the nearby iron, copper, quartz, and coal. At one point I exited the game, and when it restarted, all of the small asteroids had respawned, so that was helpful. I gathered all the pieces needed and set up a new home near my next exploration target, which was another abandoned pod. I made sure my base had everything I needed to be ready to move forward. Solar panels, a fabricator, and a tool upgrade station, where I took the liberty of upgrading my mining tool, since I'm getting the sense that I'm going to need to spend a lot of time mining and gathering resources. With my base squared away, I checked out the nearby pod. There were fragments of a skipper speeder bike and a vehicle station, but not enough fragments to build them. As I explored the wreck, I couldn't help but notice how dark it is in here, but these electronic packages might be useful. Look at that, a light bulb and plans for a flashlight. I bet we're going to need these going forward. There was also another data pad with yet another waypoint for us to explore. So, back to base to outfit for an expedition, and off we go. On the way, I came across a big dumbbell-looking structure with some little floating drones around it. Wouldn't you know, one of them started shooting lasers at me, so I hit him with my hammer until he stopped. Inside the structure, I set up an airlock to resupply my oxygen, found the rest of the fragments for the vehicle station and the skipper bike. I also found these two potato-looking asteroids and discovered that they're full of nickel. That'll probably be useful. And I took down my habitat and headed on to the waypoint I'd found on the datapad before. On the way, I found another scannable object, a pair of oxygen stations. They take mushrooms to build, so I couldn't make one, but fortunately, the mining station had a working airlock, so I was still able to get the oxygen I needed. Inside the station, I found a door labeled Door, which was neat, and it led to a cool bedroom with scannables for a bed, a desk, and a laser tool, as well as a bunch of other loot. There was another door that led to a cave with some more nickel and silver all along the walls, and a set of fragments for an asteroid miner machine. Unfortunately, you need 3 fragments to build one, and there are only 2 here, but there's a third one that you can see behind this weird rock wall. But wait, we have a jetpack, so we can just go over the wall. Clever puzzle design there. Oh, and I guess there was just a path over here I could have taken too. In the next room, there were some more item crates and a backpack upgrade fragment, so I grabbed my loot and I headed home, stopping to mine some gold asteroids I saw on my way out. Arriving back at base, I have a whole bunch of new building projects, and I decided to set up a vehicle station first. I gathered a bunch of materials with my upgraded mining tool and made myself a skipper bike. At this point, I've been playing for about an hour, and I have to say, I'm pretty pleased with my progress. I have a humble habitat of my own, a cool motorbike, and a whole bunch of tools. Things are looking good. Next, it was time to set up my laser drill. I gathered the materials for it, and also had to build a smelter machine to make gold bars, and then built the drill on a new corridor sticking off of my base. Of course, the first thing it did was shoot me, which just goes to show you can never trust laser drills. But then it started mining asteroids, and I was so excited to see all the resources piling up that I decided to build the second one. So I gathered more resources and built another drill. What I didn't know at the time was that these things drink power like crazy. So I also had to build a bunch of station batteries and solar panels in order to keep them running. It'll all be worth it in the end, though, when I go back to my base and there are just piles and piles of loot waiting for me. I wanted to take advantage of all this loot to improve my base, so I set up another room to serve as a sort of mini apartment with a bed, a desk, some windows, and some terminals. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot of choice in how to decorate right now, so this will have to do. But I'm sure we'll find stuff to make things a little more homey as we go along. With all this building done, it was time to head back out to see what was waiting for me further out in the asteroid belt. Now, the data pads at the mining station had given me a new waypoint, so I quickly set up an upgrade station in my apartment, took a few minutes to upgrade my jetpack and oxygen tank, and then hopped on my skipper and headed in that direction. Now, I don't want to spoil the story too much, but the data logs so far had indicated that this next waypoint was the target of a solo scouting mission by a person named Matu, while his friends held down the fort behind. It doesn't look like that worked out for him. But I was able to scan him and got a recipe for the engineer suit, so that's something. There was also a keycard and some more data pads in his pod, and I was able to use the keycard to open the nearby station called Theta 9. There were some scannable cosmetics in the hallway that we came into, as well as a locked door and a path to some more mining tunnels. Heading into the tunnels, I found some cool blue crystals and resource crates, as well as some red and purple jelly on the walls that say they need the laser tool, so I guess we'll have to come back later. I did find a key card to the other half of the station, as well as a power cell charger fragment, so I grabbed those and headed on over to the other side to see what was there. On the other side of the station in the Theta 9 hull, I found a number of serious electrical code violations, as well as a Mark III jetpack fragment and the rest of the power cell scanner. There are also a bunch of locked doors, so again, I'll be coming back once I find those keycards. At this point, my inventory was pretty full, so I decided to head back to base to unload and make a laser tool, but I spotted another waypoint on the way past with a summon vehicle fragment nearby, so I scanned that. That's only one of 3 though, so I guess what that vehicle is will remain a mystery for now. Ah well, time to head home and unload and upgrade. Arriving back at my base, I set up a power cell charger to recharge the cells I'd found and made for my bike, and then I set about crafting a laser tool and an engineer suit. The engineer suit seemed to increase my maximum health, but didn't provide any extra health, and since so far the only way I've found to heal up is with crafted medkits, I had to go back out almost immediately to find some more fabric. Fortunately, there were a couple of fabric crates near the beginner pod, which I'd seen before but hadn't looted, so I popped on over and grabbed those and patched myself up a bit. Now, since I was still short on nickel, gold, and a few other resources, I decided to head back out straight away, and I headed for an oxygen dome I'd seen over near the mining station. Inside were the fragments to make a hydroponic planter, but it requires fertilizer to craft, which we haven't seen yet. I also found some more fungi mushrooms in a data pad, and I poked my head into another nearby sphere structure. There was a crate full of decorations that I couldn't use, so I decided to keep moving. I actually got turned around on my way out and headed in entirely the wrong direction for a bit before stumbling across what looks like a wrecked gateway of some kind, and near it I found another air bubble containing a bunker with some blueprint boxes and a bunch more fabric. I also found a fragment for a deposit miner nearby, which was well guarded, but the laser tool did a great job taking care of the drone that attacked me. I flew out of there before I ran into anything else. Now, the blueprint boxes were starting to take up an unreasonable amount of inventory space, so when I got back to base, I set up a research station to open them up. Unfortunately, I forgot to check my power demands, and this caused a blackout, so I had to quickly craft up another habitat battery to keep my station online, but once that was done, I opened up the boxes and got a new recipe for enameled glass, a shield module, and additional mining speed and power upgrades for tools. As fortune would have it, I had the components for the mining tool upgrades, and I crafted them up and installed them in my tool straight away. Now, while I'd been out exploring, my laser drills had been mining a huge amount of iron, copper, and silver, so I decided it was finally time to upgrade my base a bit more. I gathered up some tools and set about constructing a lower deck with a few larger rooms. I'm going to use these for storage, for advanced crafting, and I want to make a greenhouse at some point. With that project done, I decided it was finally time to head back to that green cave and see what that was all about. So I gathered up my equipment and I set out. I headed over and discovered that the entrance was too small for my bike, so I left it behind and went into the cave and immediately got attacked by a weird tentacle monster. Fortunately, I had my laser tool ready and made short work of the beast. However, I did try to set up an oxygen station, only to discover that the entire cave is an unbuildable area, and since I hadn't brought a ton of spare oxygen tanks, I started to rethink the whole trip. I headed outside to an air bubble to try and come up with a plan, but while I was exploring nearby, I discovered that there's actually a second entrance to the cave, which honestly I don't think is meant to be here, but it let me bring my bike inside. It also opened to an area with 2 large storage containers, and each storage container contained spare oxygen tanks, which made me feel a whole lot better about the whole situation. So I continued to explore, fending off more of the starfish monsters, and found 2 more summon vehicle fragments, which completed the blueprint for it. Going further into the cave, I discovered a large habitat with a vehicle bay, which I promptly scanned because I'd like to build one of my own. The habitat also had a few data pads and blueprint boxes, a key card for one of the rooms at Theta 9, and the fragments for a teleporter device and a vehicle upgrade terminal. I scanned and looted what I could and decided to head out. When I returned to base, I opened up my new blueprint boxes to find an advanced medkit recipe, as well as a scanner range upgrade recipe. Also quickly set up a vehicle dock on my habitat, but unfortunately it looks like my bike can't park in it. I'm not sure what that's all about. However, I do have the plans for the summon vehicle, so I set about gathering materials and crafting one up. And boy, what an upgrade. Not only does it provide oxygen, it's faster than my bike, and I can change the color in my vehicle dock. Of course it's gotta be red. I was so excited to find this that I immediately took it out for a spin and found several new points of interest. First, I visited a waypoint called Vertical Station, which didn't have much, except vertical habitat corridors and a bunch of zero-G regulators. So I popped along and found another bubble with a hook tool as well as some plants that I could break up to get fiber and craft my own fabric. I should have come out this way sooner. I also went over to the warp gate where I was informed that my summon vehicle doesn't have a warp drive, but I found the blueprints for a warp drive as well as a large habitat room and a few other bits on a nearby asteroid. I also found this creepy cave with some alien artifacts inside, so I decided not to stick around for too long. With the summon, the game really opened up, and the gameplay loop transitioned from exploration and upgrading for progression into a more open sandbox. I spent a couple hours working on my base, upgrading my equipment and vehicle, and did a bit of high-risk mining. When it was all said and done, I was ready to see what awaited on the other side of the warp gate. Turns out it was nothing. That's the end of what's available in the early access release. In total, I spent about 7 hours playing and probably got the warp gate open at around the 4.5 hour mark, so it was a pretty short game. But that's not entirely surprising given that it just released in early access. I had a great time though, and I'm definitely going to be playing more when the next update comes out. Conveniently, the devs put a roadmap for upcoming updates in the game's main menu, and it looks like automation is going to be coming soon. My favorite. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Dakoba, and I hope you have an efficient day. I'll see you soon.